All right, welcome in. Here we are the day after the 49ers spring program has wrapped up. We saw the final practice before training camp over in Santa Clara on Wednesday. This is the piece that I wrote there. 49ers Talanoa Hufanga has gleaned key insights watching practice with GM John Lynch. Those of you who watched the shows yesterday know that that was a big theme for me, was Talanoa Hufanga alongside Jair Brown, alongside Diamolo Lenore and Charvarius Ward, four good 49ers defensive backs, watching practice with John Lynch from that center field position. John doesn't watch with everybody else. He's about 40 yards away in center field. So 40 yards past the line of scrimmage, looking back, sees the backs of the defense as he's watching all these plays develop. He wants to see things unfold from the same angle that he saw things unfold during his 15-year Hall of Fame NFL career. And Talanoa Hufanga has really valued the ability to pick John Lynch's brain. Obviously, Hufanga is a safety. Hufanga said in this article that I wrote that one of the cool parts is that Jair Brown is now understanding who John Lynch was as a football player. So he's getting in on being able to just let that rub off on you. Let John Lynch's expertise become some of your own expertise. Hufanga said that Lynch has actually encouraged him to play more instinctively. Sometimes Hufanga, because he watches so much tape, and obviously total student of the game, he's listening to what his coaches want him to do schematically. Sometimes he'll get too sucked in to following what's happened schematically, and that probably won't lead you into a lot of trouble, but it will also prevent you from making some of the bigger improvisational plays. And John Lynch has encouraged Talanoa Hufanga to be more instinctive, because that when we first saw Hufanga burst onto the scene in 2022, when he won those all-pro honors, he was instinctive as hell, right? Especially that first game against the Bears, week 1 in the monsoon at Soldier Field. He was a missile flying into that backfield. Even last year, I don't think he was quite as good in 2022 or 2023 as he was in 2022. But even last year, the 49ers run defense tumbled after Talanoa Hufanga tore his ACL. So he's hoping to be back for week 1 for San Francisco. Sounds like he probably won't be back for the start of training camp. That might still be a rehab process thing for Hufanga. He's going to take it easy. He says he wants to be smart about things, but he wants to be back by week 1. He wants to be playing instinctively. The 49ers need that. I think that this defense is going to be returning to an attack the run style mentality that they had before Steve Wilks, with Nick Sorensen now in charge. And a big, big part of that is Talanoa Hufanga coming in from the second level, being the adaptable, instinctive run blitzer that he was before his injury. A lot of that's going to be dependent on Fred Warner attacking the run more aggressively than he did last year. I thought that Steve Wilks was very focused on the pass coverage aspect of things, and the 49ers defense didn't suffer nearly as much in pass coverage as it did in run defense. But Talanoa Hufanga working back from the ACL tear is going to be a key ingredient of the 49ers trying to return back to their pre-2023 defensive mentality. Anyway, that's the article from yesterday. I'm going to ask Mike to toss this into the description. Mike, I'm going to send this to you right now on WhatsApp. As you can tell, the title of the video, the text title beneath me, is that the Brandon Aiyuk situation is simpler than many are making it out to be. Here's the take that I recently tweeted on Brandon Aiyuk. I was just getting really tired of people overcomplicating this and talking about the wide receiver market's going rate and the 49ers. Are they willing to pay the going rate? They're willing to pay the going rate for wide receivers. They're not willing to pay Justin Jefferson money to Brandon Aiyuk. I think that's simple from the outside. So here, let's have a read. In my opinion, the Brandon Aiyuk situation is simple and extends to CeeDee Lamb and Jamar Chase, both of whom are also looking for new contracts from the Cowboys and the Bengals, respectively. There's Justin Jefferson money, and then there's the going rate for all other wide receivers. There is a big difference between those two. More on that in a little bit. The top wide receivers who still need contracts will push as long as they can for deals as close to Justin Jefferson as possible. Teams like the 49ers will want the money to be closer to the generally established rate. I'll showcase the difference here in a second. Personally, I would imagine the Justin Jefferson deal has actually caused both sides to dig into their respective positions. The deadline pressure of camp and the season is likeliest to cause movement. Okay, so I talk about the two different camps here. So this is what the Justin Jefferson jump created. $88.7 million in fully guaranteed money. He ranks number one. So as you can see here, his contract stands alone. There's a $36.2 million gap between Jefferson and everybody else. There's a reason why Drew Rosenhaus, who's Tyreek Hill's agent, has come out saying that they're not happy with Tyreek's contract anymore because Jefferson's leapfrogged his by an absurd amount. Tyreek Hill's two at $52.5 million fully guaranteed. A.J. Brown at number 3, 51. Then it's Calvin Ridley and DJ Moore. It's a pretty steep drop-off after A.J. Brown. It's a really steep drop-off in between Jefferson and Tyreek Hill. So when I write that there is Justin Jefferson money and there's the going rate for all other wide receivers, this is what I mean. It's Jefferson and it's everybody else. I think it's very obvious that the receivers who haven't been signed yet would rather be up here near Justin Jefferson, or at least closer to Jefferson, than they would at spots 2 through 5. That's common sense. That's logic. I think it's also logical to say that teams would rather these deals for these receivers be closer to the 2 through 5 spots, to the generally established market, than to Justin Jefferson. So this is where you have an impasse. This is where the market is going to need, I think, some deadline pressure for it to move. Receivers are on one side. They want, and especially these A-list guys, including Aiyuk, who are still available, still haven't signed their new deals. They're going to want something closer to the Jefferson end of the spectrum because Minnesota was brazen enough, stupid enough, smart enough, whatever you want to put, was willing to award that to Justin Jefferson. And on the other side, teams aren't going to want to let that become precedent. So teams are going to want spots 2 through 5 to remain the norm here. So teams are going to be offering deals like this with this kind of guaranteed money to Brandon Aiyuk, CeeDee Lamb, and Jamar Chase. Whereas I don't think that Brandon Aiyuk, CeeDee Lamb, and Jamar Chase are going to be happy to accept fully guaranteed money totals like this because they see what Justin Jefferson signed for. So those are the ingredients for a prolonged contract standoff. I think that's really simple. I think when you have a gap that's this big, it's much more likely that two sides aren't going to see eye to eye because they obviously both have different interests. The interest for receivers is to make as much money as possible. The interest for teams is to find as team-friendly of a deal as possible. So when that happens, you need some sort of deadline pressure to spur things along. Deadline pressure can come in the form of the start of training camp. That tends to be an inflection point. And even stronger is the start of the regular season. That also tends to be an inflection point because once the regular season starts, a team, if a player is holding out, is playing without that player, and he's probably a pretty good player if he's up for big money. And the player's playing without money if he's holding out into the regular season. So that's a real deadline. Both sides are being hurt if the contract impasse lasts past that week 1 point. Last year, it was that week 1 deadline that was the trigger for the 49ers and Nick Bosa. He finally got his deal done with San Francisco a couple days before they kicked off against Pittsburgh. Bosa didn't want to give up game checks. Bosa wanted to get out onto the field, and the 49ers didn't want to give up snaps without Nick Bosa on the field, their reigning defensive player of the year. So the deadline pressure worked, and then you could, in retrospect especially, go back and ask, who did it help? Like, which side had deadline pressure working with wind at their backs? Which side got the more favorable deal out of deadline pressure? I think in the Nick Bosa scenario, the 49ers got a shorter end of the stick. I think the player won that deal, and I explained it here. Which side will deadline pressure benefit? In Nick Bosa's case, it benefited the player. The 49ers needed their defensive player of the year back as soon as possible, so the deal got done right before the opener. In the case of Brandon Aiyuk, though, I think things might be different, especially if Ricky Pearsall continues impressing into training camp. I think in that scenario, we might see more of a team-friendly deadline pressure. And I'll explain the difference here. Last year, Bosa's so valuable, the 49ers absolutely needed him to reach their goals, and they needed him right away, start of the season. They wanted to make sure they got the 1 seed. There was no scenario under which the 49ers didn't have Bosa, in which I think they could have been a dominant football team that they wanted to be to pave the way for their way back to the Super Bowl. So once he had held out all of training camp and the 49ers are staring down the barrel at week 1, I think there was actually a lot of leverage that Bosa had at that point. And you saw it. The contract ended up being worth $34 million a year, $88 million fully guaranteed, the most for any non-quarterback up until that was finally broken. That was finally broken by Justin Jefferson and his deal a few days ago. So the deadline pressure favored Nick Bosa in that case. I think in the case of Brandon Aiyuk, though, the dynamics are different. 49ers were famously thin at defensive end last year. They didn't have anybody else at that position. You had to pay Nick Bosa. You had to bring Nick Bosa back from his holdout into the building to be taken seriously as a defense. Meanwhile, the 49ers on the offensive side of the ball, not only are they loaded outside of Brandon Aiyuk, obviously they just re-signed Christian McCaffrey, they've re-signed Juwan Jennings, Deebo Samuel's under contract for 2 more years, George Kittle's expected to be healthy, they've got a boatload of running backs, even Logan Thomas, he had 55 catches from last year, is back with the team. Aside from all that, the 49ers have also used a first-round pick on a rookie, Ricky Pearsall, who through the spring program looked really damn good. From rookie minicamp through OTAs, all the way to the veteran minicamp, Ricky Pearsall had a really, really solid on-field showing. When Brock Purdy was out there with him, he had good chemistry already with Brock Purdy. He got time at all the receiver positions. And 49ers rookie receivers under Kyle Shanahan have a documented track record of success. Brandon Aiyuk in 2020 as a rookie, first-round pick like Pearsall, was on pace for over 1,000 yards before he got hurt around week 13. Deebo Samuel had a hell of a rookie season in 2019. Hell, even one of the flameout receivers, Dante Pettis, his best year with the 49ers was as a rookie in 2018. So rookies have produced as receivers in this system. And I will say that if Ricky Pearsall continues impressing, Brandon Aiyuk, I don't think is going to have wind at his back in terms of who this deadline pressure will favor. Because the 49ers aren't devoid of weapons at the receiver position. And if Pearsall adds another one into the fold, they can very credibly say, we can stay afloat without Brandon Aiyuk. That's a big if. We still have to see how Pearsall is going to beat the press man coverage when the pads come on. And there's still a trial by fire awaiting him as a rookie. But the more credibly the 49ers are set to withstand any period of absence from Brandon Aiyuk, the more deadline pressure wind is going to be at their back. The more likely it is that Brandon Aiyuk has to take the 49ers offer. And I'm thinking that the 49ers offer, again, is going to be closer to this cluster, 2 through 5, than it is at the top. So the two sides could be far apart right now, but deadline pressure will inevitably bring them closer together. The question beyond that is who gets the advantage, who concedes more when the two sides do come closer together. In the Bosa scenario last year, the team conceded more. In this scenario, just given the fact that Ricky Pearsall exists, that Ricky Pearsall is playing well, that Deebo Samuel has also looked good for the 49ers in camp. They just re-signed Juwan Jennings. In this scenario, I think the deadline pressure might favor the team more than it did in the Bosa situation last year. If you have any questions about it, let me know. Let's talk. Let's go to the 49ers Q&A. I am ready for your questions. Let's go. A lot of you here today. This is awesome. This is my last day in San Francisco for a little while. I'm going to hop on the red-eye fly tonight. Red-eye, not on the fly, on the red-eye flight tonight. And will be flying across country. Have some fun plans here for the summer. The coverage will continue as long as you guys ask good questions. And before then, I've got to get a good swim in. I'm going to go out by Fort Mason today. D. Winters. Yes, D. Winters arrow up. Fred Warner said that he was more impressed with D. Winters OTAs than any other young linebacker. That includes Tatum Bethune. That includes Jalen Graham, who was drafted alongside D. Winters last year. D had an interception a couple days ago. He's been making plays for the 49ers throughout the spring. So he's set himself up in a competitive environment to make a splash come spring. Because, even if Devondre Campbell is the fill-in for Dre Greenlaw, which they signed him to be for the start of the season, you need depth beyond that. Right. That means Campbell is the number 2 linebacker behind Fred Warner while Greenlaw's out. So you need a number 3. You need special teams guys. You need depth at 4, just in case one of the starting 3 isn't available. So yes, D. Winters, 6th round draft pick, 2023 cycle. His arrow is up. What do I think the 49ers overall record will be this year? I would say I predicted 12-5 last year. I was correct. I'm predicting 12-5 again this season. Are the 49ers Super Bowl favorites this year? They indeed are. They are betting favorites to win the Super Bowl. How does one get invited to tight end U? I don't know. I got an invite, not as a tight end. I will be there. So I did get invited to tight end U. I think there's going to be very limited media there this year. As a tight end, I think you just have to be a tight end in the league and probably have a little bit of a profile. Being a 49er, I think, helps. I think that all the 49ers tight ends who are teammates of George Kittle definitely got invites. We'll see if all of them are there. We'll also see who's going to be quarterback at tight end U. And that's coming up in about a week and a half in Nashville. So I'm really excited to bring you coverage from tight end U. Have I had a chance to see punt return drills so far? Not really. They weren't prolific during OTAs. They did a little bit more during rookie minicamp, and the 49ers had Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing back there. Pearsall looked more comfortable than Cowing. They weren't running with the ball or anything after. They're just fielding some of the punts, and I think they were kicking it with the jugs machine. And I remember Cowing bobbled a couple. I don't think Pearsall bobbled any. He looks like a really natural receiver of punts. And that's all that we really said. This is the kind of stuff that training camp is really, really necessary for. What is the best place to get a burger in Nashville? That's actually a really good question. I'm going to get back to you on that. Why don't we use this summer to investigate what the best place to get a burger in Nashville is? I've got a lot of good San Francisco food stuff for you coming. My last day here in the city today, I've been able to go around a couple spots. I was actually in Treasure Island a little bit earlier today, found some good food out there. And yesterday, this was really, really cool. And I'll tease to it right now because I don't have the video ready. But I stopped by the San Francisco Fire Department station number 13. They got a Brock Purdy jersey up, number 13 in San Francisco SFFD station number 13. I think it's over on Sansom Street. Anyway, you guys know that I love connecting the 49ers and community because that's what sports is all about. I've been trying to connect the 49ers and community through food. We'll have to connect it through that firehouse as well. But the best burger in Nashville, that's for the next month and a half. We'll decide that over that time frame. I appreciate you, Anthony. Thank you very much. Lucky 13. David, from what I've seen with Ricky Pearsall, do you think he's worth the gamble to make a Super Bowl run this year without Brandon Aiyuk? I don't think that's necessarily the stakes of this. The 49ers have Ayuk under contract, right? So they hold the cards here. If Ayuk wants 14.1 million this year at least, that's his existing contract, he's going to have to show up and play at some point. So the 49ers aren't required to deviate from what they're comfortable offering on a long-term deal. They can have a certain price in mind that's anchored down by the amount of the franchise tag, because you hold that as leverage, and they can say take it or leave it to Brandon Aiyuk. If Brandon Aiyuk says, nah, I'm good, he starts losing money week 1, week 2, week 3. That's why this deadline pressure exists. At some point, either the 49ers are really going to want him on the field, so they're going to go out of their way to up their offer, or Brandon Aiyuk is going to want to get paid, so he's going to go out of his way to take less money. At some point, that deadline pressure always tends to create a resolution in these matters. What will happen if Ricky Pearsall continues to look really good, and that is through training camp, and then if this extends into the regular season, if he continues to look really good, the 49ers will have much more comfort and leverage on their side than Brandon Aiyuk does on his. So it makes it much more likely that Brandon Aiyuk succumbs to the 49ers offer than the 49ers bending over toward Brandon Ayuk's offer. Right? So you have to look at this from a leverage standpoint. And Ricky Pearsall, in a way, is a leverage piece. Now, your question is, do you think he's worth the gamble to make a Super Bowl run without Brandon Aiyuk? Again, that's not the gamble that the 49ers are making necessarily, because the deadline pressure will probably dictate this getting resolved. But also, it's way too early to judge anything with Ricky Pearsall and how much of a pivot point he can be in this. This is going to be an evolving process. So this has only been OTAs. He's looked good through OTAs. If he looks good through training camp, that gives a little bit more leverage power to the 49ers. They could be like, okay, well, we can survive a little bit longer at a very high level without Brandon Aiyuk. If Pearsall looks really good playing in actual games and Aiyuk is still holding out at that point, well, then that puts more good stuff on the 49ers side. Now, the opposite would give Brandon Aiyuk a little bit more leverage. Everything is happening within the window and within the prism of a win now year for the 49ers. But not everything is going to be won or lost in just one game or 1 week or one training camp, which is why this is an evolving situation. Shout out from Madison, Wisconsin. Shout out to Visalia, California. That's my hometown. I do think that D. Winters can have a big impact. That third linebacker spot can have a real impact. It's not going to be on the field that often, but injuries also mean that the third linebacker can see linebacker 2. And 49ers linebacker 2 is coming off of an Achilles tear. So the linebacker room has depth, has talent. It's a matter of who steps up to grab the individual roles, though. Debo said this is the most complicated offense he's ever been a part of. What do I attribute that to? Well, and as you put here, this is the only offense he's been a part of. Kyle Shanahan runs a complex offense. The reason why it's so complex is that, especially from the receiver's point of view, is that every single receiver has to learn every single receiving position, which I don't think is commonplace in the NFL. Might be becoming more of a thing around the NFL, but this is a Shanahan type of influence on the league. So the Z receiver needs to know the X position. Both the Z and the X need to know the F position, inside and out, because the offense is stronger when it's versatile, when you could line anybody up anywhere, because that puts a greater mental strain on the defense. So because receivers have to learn every single position, and because they're just used to knowing one coming out of college, I think that makes it much more complex for them. That being said, rookies have handled this just fine. It's usually it's the sophomore slump that has gotten receivers under Kyle Shanahan. That's when their target share has decreased. That's when they've had to fight to take that next step to get into a position to impress their coach again, enough to be higher up in the progression list. But even Dante Pettis, his best season with the 49ers came his rookie year. Deebo Samuel was really good as a rookie, saw a bit of a sophomore slump there in 2020. A lot of that was injury fueled for Deebo Samuel. Brandon Aiyuk, really good as a rookie, on pace for a 1,000-yard season, had the big hurdle for the 49ers against the Eagles on Sunday Night Football. And then it was the second season. Took him a while to get that target share back. Didn't see a smaller snap load early on in 2021, but the target share wasn't there. And then he really, really emerged in 2022 and 2023, a couple 1,000-yard seasons. What restaurant do I recommend to take the missus in Healdsburg, Geyserville? Okay, I'm gonna look this up. All right. I have two really good ones, because I know I was there about a month ago, but I totally forgot the name of. Okay, so it's Molti Amici, which means many friends in Italian. That's where you're going to go in Healdsburg. And then go to the Geyserville Gun Club. That is the name of the bar in Geyserville. It's called the Geyserville Gun Club. And enjoy. It's a really, really cool spot. Now, I need to find the name of the restaurant, which is right next to the Geyserville Gun Club. It's also Italian, Catelli's, Catelli. I heard Diavola Pizzeria is also good. So they're big on the Italian in Geyserville. And I know that I also recommended Molti Amici, many friends in Healdsburg. But my last name is Lombardi, so I can get away with recommending 3 Italian places to you. We have somebody endorsing Diavola. Greg Smith likes Jacob Cowing's burst. First 5 yards of the 40, 14.96. He's really fast. I mean, I think Jacob Cowing could be a deep threat for the 49ers. With that kind of speed, though, it's not just the deep threat that a player brings with that kind of speed. When you can't accelerate that much in the first 5 yards, defensive backs typically have to play a step or two further back than they normally do, which creates underneath cushions. So I think that Cowing can definitely have an impact. I think that Pearsall has shined more so far, but of course Cowing was a little bit of a lower draft pick. It doesn't have the same frame as Ricky Pearsall. To be honest, we're not going to know anything for sure until the games start, but we'll know more and more as contact increases, because so much of the game is the ability to beat press coverage. Somebody like Jacob Cowing is going to have to prove that he can do that as well. And the first opportunities are really going to start in training camp. How do I see the defensive line this year compared to last? That's a really good question. And I have to pop up the roster just to illustrate how much change there has been. Take a look at this. So the defensive line is right here in this cluster. The teal represents new veteran players. The green represents new rookies. The 49ers have overhauled 50% of their primary rotation. Typically, 8 guys will rotate through on game day, maybe 9, but typically 8. The 49ers have replaced 4 of those 8. The biggest name that is gone is Eric Armstead. He had some availability concerns, right? Missed 13 games of the past 2 years. Malik Collins from the Texans, who's already played in the system because he was under DeMeco Ryans, is going to replace him. They traded with Houston for Malik Collins. 49ers also let Chase Young walk in free agency. Leonard Floyd, somebody who's been much more productive than Chase Young over the course of his NFL career, has replaced Chase, especially post Chase Young's injury. Leonard Floyd is going to be the edge rusher. And you know what? I've said this about Leonard Floyd. He's built more like a wide receiver than your typical edge rusher. And that's a good thing. That's an exciting thing for the 49ers, because Floyd has proven that he's strong enough for the NFL. It's not like some rookie that's coming in that's really lean. You're like, oh, how is he going to handle the NFL game? We know that Leonard Floyd can handle the NFL game. He's got 39.5 sacks over the past 4 years. Hadn't been a liability against the run. He's not only is he wiry strong, but he's just very quick and explosive and athletic, and he's smart. So he knows how to move and really offset some of the size weight disadvantage that he might have. Anyway, when we talk about this 49ers defensive line, Floyd is going to be counted on to clean up a lot of the pressure that Javon Hargrave, Malik Collins, and Nick Bosa generate, or any other guys that are on the field at the same time as Floyd. But Floyd has been a really good cleanup sack guy with his pursuit, with his athleticism, with his reach. I mean, he's got long arms too. He's just a lengthy, explosive player. He's going to be counted on to bind the entire pass rush together in a way that the 49ers were hoping they would get from Chase Young, but they knew there might be limitations there coming off the knee surgery. So they're hoping that Leonard Floyd can do that. They're hoping that Malik Collins can be a more durable fixture in the middle than Eric Armstead. Even if he doesn't have the same kind of ceiling as Eric Armstead, they hope that the floor is higher. They hope that Jordan Elliott can give them a better run-stopping presence than Javon Kinlaw. Elliott's essentially the Kinlaw replacement. And then last year, they never really found that replacement for Charles Omenihu, who left to the Kansas City Chiefs. Omenihu replaced Arden Key as your defensive end, who could also rush from a defensive tackle alignment on passing downs. That's been missing for a little bit more than a season now for the 49ers. So Yetur Gross-Matos, the free agent signing formerly of the Panthers, he's the guy that's designed to fill into that role. As far as the interior goes, yes, they added Collins, they added Elliott, both only on 2-year deals for the 49ers. Javon Hargrave still with the team, but he's a pass rushing specialist. You talk about, okay, how are they going to fix the run defense? Look out for a rookie, Evan Anderson. Look out for a second-year man, Shaquille Brown, who just tried out and made this team. Both of these guys, they're closer to the DJ Jones type than the 49ers have had since DJ Jones left the team. And I think that's one thing that was missing last year from the defensive line. Like they tumbled down to number 26 against the run. Even though they did have Eric Armstead, who was an important part of the number 1 run defense in 2021, and a really good run defense in 2022. I think that the Armstead DJ Jones pairing in 21 is what made the 49ers so damn good up the middle against the run. They lost DJ after 21. They've lost Armstead now after 23. So how are they going to get back to the top run defense wise? Well, you've got to get a nose tackle type in there against the run. And I think that Evan Anderson, undrafted free agent, Shaquille Brown, they assigned him after Tennessee cut him. Both of these guys have the width to really, really be plugs there in the middle of that run defense. So that's how the defensive line is going to look different. That is one of the most overhauled parts of this 49ers team. It is way too early to rank special teams. I know they focused on it over the course of this offseason, but we don't even know how teams are going to play the new kickoffs and kick returns yet. We just don't know how these guys are going to meld together. But when you look up and down the roster, the 49ers have made a lot of special teams specific signings. Trent Taylor was a solid punt returner for them. Didn't muff a punt back in his original tenure with the 49ers. Go down to when you make the scan through the defensive positions. Ezekiel Turner was a special teams ace for the Arizona Cardinals. He blocked the Mitch Wishnowsky punt in 2020. Yetur Gross-Matos, he could have the body type and the versatility to be good on special teams. Chase Lucas is a really good gunner. I don't have him actually making the 53-man roster, but I think he could be a solid special teams player for the 49ers. So they should be better than last year, but it's way too early because that new kickoff rule is going to be a huge deal. They do know they do know the kickoff rule. We just don't know how it's going to play out. It's not simple at all. It's a drastically different scenario than it was last year. Every single team is going to have to adapt on the fly to this new kick return rule and figure out how big they want their blockers to be, how quick they need their blockers to be, who they want their returners to be, how they want to kick the ball. I mean, it's new. It's uncharted territory. So we can't really gauge special teams units until we have a little bit of a sample, until we see what's happened. No interviews yet with KJ Wright. Typically, they don't make quality control coaches available. You have to be at least one rung higher up the ladder. I already answered your question about Jacob Cowing, man. Why are you commenting it again? I dedicated like 3 minutes to that. Go for Broke wonders how many cornerbacks the 49ers will keep on the 53. Sounds like a good question to me. Charvarius Ward, Isaac Yadam, Diameter Lenore, that's 3. Renardo Green, that's 4. Darrell Luter Jr. has looked good, that's 5. They might keep 6 with Rock Yassin, 5 or 6. And hey, that's tough for Ambry Thomas, Samuel Womack, Chase Lucas, Kamon Hall. This is the deepest the 49ers have ever been at cornerback. All right, I'm on my way to swim in the bay. Give me a thumbs up if you think I should do a car live, one of the driverless car lives on the way. Also, so either give a thumbs up or a thumbs down on the driverless car live. If I get enough thumbs up, I'll do one, and we'll start here in about 10 minutes. 2, comment, put it in the comment section, or and you could either in the live comment section or the one later, what you want the next show to be about. I'm just trying to get a gauge of what people want. You want me to talk about Purdy? Do you want me to talk about Aiyuk again? I just did with Aiyuk. Do you want me to talk about Bosa, salary cap? You name it. It's all up to you. And while you're at it, go ahead and check out the link in the description. This is the article I wrote about Talanoa Hufanga watching practice with John Lynch. Looks like we got a lot of thumbs up in the comment section. So maybe we'll be coming live here in a few minutes. All right. Leave your comments about what you want to hear regarding the 49ers. We'll talk to you really soon.